I'm Nanci Kauffman, head of Castellea School, and I'm honored to speak with the Castellea community today about the historic election results announced this morning. With me to help provide some student perspective is Divya Ganesan. Welcome, Divya.
Thanks, Ms. Kauffman, and hi, everyone. My name is Divya, and I'm the All Student Body President of Castellea, and I'm really honored and excited to be part of this reflection about election results.
Great. I can't imagine anyone I'd rather be doing this with, Divya. So let's begin with what we all now know, which is that after several days of a fairly tumultuous counting of votes, which was happening all across the United States, our national news outlets have now declared that former Vice President Joe Biden will be our next president. And not lost in this announcement is the fact that America will inaugurate Kamala Harris, the first Black woman, the first South Asian American woman, the first woman, period, as our next vice president. So, Divya, what do you hope young people will focus on as they reflect on this election and these results?
Well, I think first, what's clear to me after this election is that the youth voice not only matters, but has the opportunity and chance to create incredible impact on results and also the change we hope to make. We've organized our classmates, many students at Castellea have organized not only through social media, but we have been the poll workers. We have been the student phone bakers who have been hung up on, but also have had some successes. We've organized through ASORs. We've had the conversations we need to be having at the national level in our local community. And the result was unprecedented youth voter turnout rate across the nation and high voter registration levels everywhere. And I think another reflection that we must have is that the work isn't exactly over. In fact, I think more than anything, it's just the beginning. Now comes the work of the conversations, the engagements, the looking at specific policy that takes to create the change that all of us want to see, both in our local community at Castellea, but also at the national level.
Excellent. I share in your pride in the impact that young people had this year. I never signed so many forms for permission for students to work as poll workers as I did this year. Well, and now that I'm fairly confident that you probably also have some thoughts about our Vice President-elect, Senator Kamala Harris, and the role that she's going to play as a leader. And I don't know if you've had a chance to be onto social media yet, but I've seen memes already warning us to watch out for the shards of glass everywhere, because we are witnessing a shattering of the glass ceiling by our VP-elect. And certainly as a girls' school, we're inspired by her trajectory. And early on in the primaries, she coined the phrase, "Justice is on the ballot." And I have to admit that she was one of the inspirations for Castellea's theme this year, which is justice. So my question to you is, how do you think students might begin to think differently about the meaning of justice in the months and years ahead?
Good question. I feel like the first thing that is clear to me is that seeing someone like Vice President-elect Harris, which is crazy to say now, who I think on a personal note, seeing that South Asian woman, but as a woman in general, having this important role in justice, I think shows us all that we have a role to play in creating the justice that we seek in our communities, just as Vice President-elect Harris has. I think it's impossible to ignore the fact that she was not only a California senator, but I still find it amazing that she actually came to Castellea as a commencement speaker in 2008. What a lucky class. Imagine them now. And even was, to my knowledge, spoke with 8th graders on their DC trip, which is another amazing opportunity. And so Senator Harris is truly really close to the Castellea community. And I think she's taught us through both her career in the DOJ, but also now moving on to the White House, that justice is not centered in a single action, a single position or role. It's really centered around a mindset. And I think that's what it comes down to at Castellea. when we are learning in our education spaces, but when we are also extending our learning in ACE orgs and in our after-school extracurriculars, we must have the mindset of justice. That starts with our local community. I've been proud to be working with students on the Anti-Racist Student Coalition that is starting to do the work of healing and creating justice in our own community. Because I think Castleia is really built on the foundation that every student here deserves not only an equal opportunity to learn, but an equal opportunity to get the education we need to become the future leaders that can actually be the ones who know how to deal with such a diverse, growing American population.
That is so insightful, Divya. I completely agree with you. Often, when I first proposed the theme of justice, people thought, simply about the justice system and the court system. And I appreciate that you've kind of cast the vision around justice as really beginning with opportunity and ensuring from the start that every person has the equal opportunity for the kind of education that you're talking about, which leads to all kinds of other opportunities. But I also know that there are other themes and other topics that we'll be looking to this next administration to tackle. And I know it's on my mind, but I'm wondering, what do you think is on the mind of young people? What are they going to be eager to see this new administration tackle?
Well, to be fair, I'm truly inspired by my classmates and peers because there are multiple topics where I think that we have been extremely vocal on. Number one, I would say climate change. We care about the environment because that's our future and we want to preserve it for ourselves. Obviously, racial justice is a topic that we hope the next administration addresses. But I also think that for us seniors who are approaching college, student debt is increasingly on our minds. Immigration, I think as an all-girls school, also women's reproductive rights. In a time of COVID, what does healthcare look like for us, but also what does healthcare look like specifically for women?
Wow, I appreciate how you brought that uniquely Castleia perspective to that question. So I'm going to wrap up with a final question that's a little bit challenging, but I think our community is up for hearing us reflect on this. I don't think we have all the answers yet, but it certainly represents the kind of questions that we as a community are asking ourselves. During the course of the past 4 years, our country has become increasingly polarized, and now we have witnessed what has clearly been a divisive election. And this new administration will have their work set out for them. And it doesn't simply mean rewinding to 4 years ago, because a lot has happened in these past 4 years, and especially in 2020 alone, including among the major ones, a racial justice reckoning. There's a lot of work to be done before all of us can really feel as the kind of united community and nation that Joe Biden, I know, aspires for us to be. Our Black, Indigenous, and people of color, our LGBTQ community, our non-Western religious communities. There are lots of people who have come to this country and yet felt marginalized. So in your role as a student leader, how do you think you'll be able to inspire your peers to tackle the challenges ahead, to support the administration in tackling these challenges ahead? We need to move people out of their silos so that everyone is fully seen and heard and understood and ultimately welcomed to fully engage, not just as citizens, but as leaders. What can young people do about that, what has for years felt like an insurmountable challenge?
It's a very good question. I'm humbled to think that I would be the one to inspire my fellow student leaders, but I don't think that's completely accurate. I think that more accurate is that they inspire me and everything that they do. And I really want to acknowledge first my fellow senior leaders who are really been leading Castleia in a way that I think no other class could do. So class of 2021, you truly have my heart. I also want to acknowledge the ACE org leaders, Anti-Racist Student Coalition, Green Team, Human Rights Watch. There is a lot of amazing work going on campus already. And I would argue that Castleia students from the get-go know how to be the best leaders that they can. I think something I've been reflecting on is that the idea of what makes a Castellet a student. And I don't think there's a single thing that unifies all of us in a certain way. I do have to say, though, that something that we all do very well as a result of the Castellet curriculum education is that we know how to think critically and we know how to criticize. So I think that today that means our leadership is analyzing the structures of justice or maybe injustice in our country. It means criticizing, reforming, even restructuring and recreating the structures. And I think our leadership starts in our conversations, in our education, but extends to the conversations we're having outside the classroom and above. And as we move on to a period of healing, I think there's a couple of things that student leaders can do. The first one is have the bravery to both make mistakes and make them boldly, but also call out mistakes. I want to call out a mistake that I made earlier, and that assuming that we're just a community full of women. We're not. We're a community full of many genders and also sexualities. And so that is something that I hope we can continue to make a pattern, that we are reflecting and boldly making mistakes as we continue. The second thing that I want to say is that Castellet students can really actively engage with the concept of real talk, but essentially, real talk is a concept that means engaging honestly and transparently with perspectives that we don't always agree with, with the goal of having more transparent, productive conversations. And so my hope is that as we enter this period, we are trying to seek perspectives that we don't necessarily agree with, so that we can better understand our own worldviews as we go into the world. And I don't think that the result of these conversations are necessarily agreement or even a persuasion in any way, but rather just a genuine desire and curiosity, as I know that's one of our anti-racist competencies, to just listen to understand. And I think when we have that mindset, we can get a lot done.
Wow, Divya, I so appreciate that reflection. I know that all of your teachers and even your peers appreciate hearing you reflect on so much that you've learned at Castellet and so much that you therefore understand, not just about the importance of these historic election results, but also the demands that will be placed on this next administration, because so many hopes and dreams will be held. They will hold for all of us as they move ahead in their leadership. And certainly we all know, because we engage in our leadership competencies, leadership is challenging. It means embracing ambiguity. And I believe we have two humans who are prepared to do that in every way possible as they lead our country. So Divya, I want to thank you so much for joining me and for helping me launch what I am sure will be the first of many conversations, discussions, and debates about the results of this historic election. And I certainly look forward to seeing you and your classmates the next time you're on campus as we continue this dialogue. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Ms. Kauffman. Thank you, everyone.